We need to ensure we reach 43% of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. That's the ultimate goal. So for me, I believe in a two-pronged approach that we need to push towards. We need to phase out oil and gas emissions, so fossil fuel emissions, and we need to ramp up as quickly as possible the renewable space. And while we do that, that's kind of the bridge, and this is the just transition we're always talking about, to then reach to hopefully a world where, go ahead.
Sorry, Minister, when you say phase out of emissions, of oil and gas emissions, you mean decarbonizing oil and gas. It's not phasing out oil and gas. Do you believe that oil and gas still has an important role to play in our energy mix? Because this is an important delineation.
It does, because we're not ready yet. If you look around us, the financing is missing. The financing is missing for so many countries to make sure that they have enough renewables to be able to cover their energy security. So it's really important that we understand that this transition, this just and pragmatic transition that we all have to push towards, needs to have a ramp up of clean and renewable energy. How are you going to build your solar panels? How are you going to build your wind turbines? You need energy for that. And so therefore, fossil fuels will still need to be there for a foreseeable future or foreseeable time. And until then, we need to decarbonize our oil and gas. We need to make sure that all the high carbon intensity fossil fuels need to be pushed out, and we need to have low carbon intensity fossil fuels while we ramp up the renewables.
So the efforts to decarbonize the industry, how much is being spent on that? Because I think we've been focusing on how much money is being spent on renewable energy sources of energy, but we also need to focus on how much is being spent on decarbonizing oil and gas that will still be with us.
We've spent about $150 billion in the last 20 years in the country and outside the country to ramp up the renewable energy space. And we can see this takes time, because it's not only the production, the distribution, it's the capacity building. So you need to have that pathway, but you need to have that pathway, you need to have the political will. And for us, it is so important that not just we look at the net zero pathway and ensure we reach it, but we need to support others as well to reach it.
COP28 chair, Minister Sultan Al Jaber, the head of one of the largest oil companies here in the UAE, ADNOC, but also co-founder of Masdar City, which is a renewable energy company. A lot of criticism, by the way, globally in terms of his appointment, but he brings something interesting to the table where he understands both sides of the story. He's also been the one that's saying, look, we need to take a pragmatic approach. But then the question becomes, as we're investing a lot more in oil and gas, as we're trying to take this pragmatic approach, is it not going to derail us from the efforts to try and cap the degrees to 1.5 degrees Celsius? That is then the big question.
I actually believe that having him on board means we're actually able to move a sector that we really need to move. And if I look at, he's the one who set up Masdar City and the company Masdar. And if we look at their portfolio right now, I think they've reached 20 gigawatts of what they're operating and what they've developed in the country and outside the country. He was put in ADNOC to future-proof ADNOC and make sure that it starts moving into different energy sources such as hydrogen, looking at a lot of the new technologies as well. So he has been the transformative figure in Masdar and has been put in ADNOC for that reason, to transform ADNOC to become the future ADNOC. And now with that in mind, having him is really, first of all, he's a businessman, he has a huge network. If we are to make haste and move the needle when it comes to climate change, we believe he's the right man to do so.